Back in LeGuin, we had a total overhaul of the economic system, and till date, that one has had some interesting repercussions within the game, and of course, a community that is rather divided on the subject of that. Personally, I don't have a problem with it. I think it was a good position to take and a good step in the right direction, basically turning the game into Victoria 3 in the skies. Regardless, we're going to be seeing a total overhaul, well, I say total, a tweak to the planetary output process on planets. Now, what we've had in the past is this. In this particular case, we will have our planet, it has our districts on it, it's got our buildings, etc. Get ready, because this is going to change quite significantly, because this will be the new UI that will be presented to you. And as you can see, a brand new district has been added, and this is the brand new industrial district. Now, what does the brand new industrial district actually do? Well, first of all, it adds a single artisan job and a single metallurgist job. That basically means that no longer will you have to build foundries, and no longer will you have to build the joys, of course, of the consumer good factories. Now, the real question is here how this is going to tie into those factories and foundries to begin with. Well, the option here is that you can have either an alloy factory or a consumer good factory. This is a planetary unique building, and you will have to choose on either of those, whether or not you're going to specialize on consumer goods or whether or not you're going to specialize on alloys based on your planet. And that right there is fascinating to me, because having that option is really, really cool. So how does this actually work? Well, the industrial district itself, it has one job of each type, and it will generate 3 alloys and 6 consumer goods. Of course, final numbers are in final, for a cost of 12 minerals. That right there is pretty decent. It's a 9 for 12 or 12 for 9 sort of deal, which is rather nice. But in addition to that, you can add those, as previously mentioned, buildings to specialize your particular districts. So what you can do, for instance, is add a foundry and then say, okay, we've added a foundry. It adds 2 additional jobs of that, for instance, metallurgist to the planet, just like it did in the past. And of course, you will get your resource generation there. Pretty straightforward. However, if you then upgrade that foundry, every single industrial district will get either 1 or 2, the numbers aren't final yet, additional jobs on every single district. And that is a massive number, because that means that the more districts you have, the more resources will be generated. And it's pretty crazy, because basically in some scenarios that means that you will have an output increase of almost 200%, where a district will generate 9 alloys per district, which is really, really awesome. And the same goes, of course, for consumer factories. Still, though, the real question is here whether or not you will be able to specialize your planets completely. And apparently, the developers have already thought of this and actually thought by themselves, you know what, we could use the Forge World designation and add even more metallurgists per district by shifting a job to the other side. So basically, you can use your designations on your planets to completely specialize your industrial districts to what you want them to do. In that way, you can have the perfect place to generate as many alloys or consumer goods as you want, which I think is a fascinating idea, especially when it comes to generating alloys. And I feel also this is going to speed things up quite significantly early in the game, especially now that we've got a lot of civics that have high demand of consumer goods, specifically the Death Cult as well as the Memorialists, which do require quite a lot of consumer goods. And of course, the demand from the community to do more stuff with the religious faction, specifically spiritualists, which in the past also required quite a lot of consumer goods. So this could be a run up to that, but who knows in this regard. Still, though, being able to not have consumer goods be much of a problem anymore is rather interesting and allows you to play around with the market. But the real question here is the ability to generate more alloys for you to throw at your enemies, build new stations, etc. Especially things like Void Dwellers will have, in my opinion, easier time generating the resources that they need to get more habitats, because alloys won't be much of a problem anymore. The real question is whether or not the upgrades to the alloy foundry are still going to cost moats, because strategic resources are still really important. So the real question is then, with the upgrade, will your industrial districts require moats to upkeep the higher demand of alloys? Very similar to how it works with Ecumonopole, which is of course part of Megacorp. These are all questions that are in the back of my head, and I'm sure that the developers have actually thought of all of these, and these are all things that are currently in the pipeline. But still, it's really, really fascinating. In addition, the industrial district, similar to the city district, counts as a district that you can use in order to pave over a planet and turn it into an Ecumenopolis. So no longer will you just need a ton of the districts required, or the city districts required, in order to fill that up. Now you can also use the industrial districts to fill that one up, which is rather cool. I really enjoy this sort of approach, and apparently there's a good reason why they're doing this, and it has to do with the AI and being and allowing the AI to do the things that they need to do in order to build an optimized economy. Telling them to, instead of building buildings, building districts is much easier, because basically you can template things a lot easier, because buildings are problematic when you don't have enough pops on your planet and they all collapse, and then the AI's economy collapses completely. Which takes us to the building slots as well. So the building slots is interesting too. So building slots will change. They will no longer be tied to population. You will no longer need tiers of population like you will have in the past in order to get the amount of buildings that you need. So right now, for every single 5 pops that you get a building slot. This is going to change with this particular update. For every single city district that you build, you will get a building slot. For every planetary administration upgrade that you will do, you will get a certain amount of building slots, which is a huge deal, because it means that you will in some cases never be able to get enough building slots, especially on smaller planets. However, starting planets will also be increased by 2 size on average, which helps a lot with this. Still, though, it does mean that if you want to focus on building-based economies, say science stuff, etc., you will want to aim for those larger planets, because you will need the city districts to unlock those particular building slots in order to get things done. And this is rather interesting, because it means that being able to get all those building slots and getting all those specialist buildings means that you will need to build those city districts. In addition, because it's something that ties in to the previous thing that was mentioned with the industrial districts. Right now, there is 12 in total. Yeah, the number of building slots remains the same. But the real question is, considering the alloy plant, as the alloy foundry, as well as the consumer good factory, will only take up 1 slot in total, because it's a planetary unique, you will have more space to build more stuff, at least in the building slots. So no longer will you have planets filled with alloy structures or with consumer goods structures, which means you can specialize on science or maybe something brand new that the developers have in mind. Being able to fill up those new building slots with new things would be really cool. So I also think this is going to lead into something that allows for more new buildings that are going to be added in to this, which is, again, really, really cool. Specialized buildings, Ecumonopole, ring worlds, hive worlds, machine worlds will start with all of their building slots unlocked, so you can do whatever. Habitats will not have them all unlocked. Habitation modules do not open up building slots. However, Voidborn Ascension perk will continue to grant 2 building slots to embrace those living spaces, and it will most likely also be tied into planetary administration buildings. So expect less slots to be available on Void Dweller buildings, or at least Voidborn, or any sort of habitats in general. Branch offices, in addition, branch offices slots are unlocked based on the level of the capital building, as well as whether or not the planet's owners has the insider trading traditions. So basically, the insider trading tradition is part, I believe, of the prosperity tree, if I'm not entirely mistaken, but it will allow corporate buildings to be unlocked slots with that as well. So basically what it means there is the further advanced the society is, you will be able to build more corporate buildings on that planet and add more jobs, which is rather cool. Again, no longer tied to the population necessary, will allow you to do more stuff with them. Of course, on the fourth slot, most likely, you will have the diplomatic offices, because it feels like that will be now a tier 4 corporate building. Or at least it will be tied to the most advanced planetary administration building. So why is all of this stuff being done? All of the buildings being decoupled from population growth makes it easier to pre-build a planet to a certain degree. And this is, of course, very important for the AI. It also means that you can plan building planets out more easily, as well as specialize them more easily, which is rather interesting. Having the ability to do more stuff on planets, of course, opens up a whole new world of new buildings, which is rather cool. Tech worlds, of course, could be a mixture of city districts and industrial districts, or because then you can make space for those research labs and have the consumer goods being produced locally, which is really, really cool in terms of that. Still, though, the developers are still experimenting very, very heavily with this. For instance, adding potentially edicts to completely turn over your production towards alloys when you're in a clinch, or messing around with planetary designations, being able to do all sorts of things that are still completely up in the air, whether or not planetary features can tie into this, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, the economic system in Stellaris is continuously developing, and seeing all of this happening is fascinating to me, and I'm really looking forward to this to see how it goes. In addition, drones, as well as any sort of Gestalt empire, will have a different approach. They will get more artisan drones or more alloy drones, depending on what type of Gestalt empire they are. Of course, hive minds don't have consumer goods, but still, it's something that they're looking at. So there's a lot of potential to be had here. There's also things like whether or not the food generation buildings, at least the hydroponics domes, whether or not they are going to be influenced by the improving buildings on that particular front. So whether or not those buildings are going to impact the districts is completely up in the air. I really doubt that it will, because adding even more pops to, say, the food districts, etc., could be causing serious problems, as well as, say, the lab bonuses, adding more bonuses to pops working in research districts on ring worlds, etc., etc. So these are all questions that are still up in the air, and whether or not that this is going to be happening. Still, though, we're going to be seeing quite a big change in the near future, or who knows when this is going to be, to the economic system. It's not nearly as big as the changes that we saw in LeGuin. It is a refinement of the system to allow the AI to deal with planets better, and making the game better to play for everybody, and having a nice challenge. Still, though, we're going to go and wrap up this video here. What is your thought about this particular change, this economic change that is coming sometime in the future? Leave your comments below, because I'm really, really fascinated by this. Of course, I will drop a link to the Dev Diary itself in the description below as well, and I'm really looking forward to read your comments on that as well. Feel free to give a like, and in the meantime, I want to thank my patrons for making this video possible. But I'm just going to go ahead and sign off here. Until next time, take good care of yourselves, and as always, the spice must flow, and so does the economy.